Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the live stream. Hopefully you can see this.
You can see it. Everyone but Stu, whose face is covered by this mic right here.
Oh no! What am I gonna do?
There we go.
Now I'm gonna have to reposition this.
No, oh, I shouldn't have brought it up. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't want there to be a line in his face.
It is what it's our first live stream. We just roll with this
That's
kind of
fair.
thing. This is, you know,
I
that
hope
actually
this is my good side.
Is it? Do you know your good side?
I don't know my good side. I probably don't have one.
I think it is this side because you get the part right here.
Okay.
I think that's helpful. Your hair is always perfect too. I noticed that in the video we did.
I have yet to have a bald spot, so I'm
doing well.
Crossing my fingers.
I don't know how old you are.
How you don't know what?
Old you are.
I said it a few minutes ago.
Did you?
Found out that Daniel over here went to high school like 20 minutes from where I went to high school. Very St. Louis thing, but it was like west of St. Louis. Like neither of it. He's like, I grew up west of here. I was like, how west? Turns out we played each other in sports in high school.
That's awesome.
Oh, you were doing track when I was doing baseball. Yeah. I did baseball while you were doing track. Spring sports. Yeah. All right. Jason. Oh, he's good. You good?
Oh, I got to turn this on.
I think we got a speaker over here somewhere. Oh, my.
How do we feel about this? Is this the right volume? Too loud?
Won't know till we try it.
One more time. Check, check, check. I am worried about the feedback. We'll have to be careful of this. All right.
Careful, careful.
Strangely quiet in here.
You turn down just a little bit.
Check, check, check. Hello, hello.
Check, check, check.
That's
okay,
better.
I think that
That's
works.
better. That's good. All right, we ready?
Well, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
We got like 45 minutes on TV.
Here we go.
Yeah, these are brand new notes. It was an actual preview. Now it's just like, let's remember Indiana Vassilev.
All right, here we go, guys. Ready? Welcome, everyone, to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We are live from Blue Jay Brewing, and it is such an exciting thing. Oh, my gosh. That feels so good. We're doing it for the first time, everyone, and so we'll just see how this goes. We'll just be happy to get through this episode and have a good time with our friends today. So if you're listening on the radio and it's off or on our podcast, just go with the flow. That's what we're going to do today. But I'm so excited to do that with my friends. The chat is live in front of me, which is so exciting. But mainly, the most important thing is that Matt Baker is here to keep us going if things go off the rails. Matt, how's it going?
Fantastic. We're 2 days out from the start of St. Louis City season. News will just not stop breaking. We always joke that we do this on a Thursday and something ends up happening on a Thursday, and it completely decapitated our show notes. We're going to dig into that really soon. So thank you so much. I'm looking people in the face. This is the weirdest thing in the world. Thank you so much for joining us here at Blue Jay Brewing. Thank you to our friends, Jason and Nicole Thompson here at Blue Jay. Fantastic brewery, great location for St. Louis. If you haven't been, come, and maybe we'll do another one of these if it works out. But I'm excited to be here, and there's so much to talk about with the season underway.
Absolutely. We got Stuart Holtgren on the end here. You've got your Tim Ream coffee mug. It's already saving the day because it's your mic stand, so that's a good start.
Yeah, perfect. Otherwise, I would have to hold it all the time, and my hands aren't used to holding things as long as you are. I mean, you're a plumber. So
That's true.
No, I sit at a desk all day. So my hands are weak.
You know what I'm excited about? I'm excited that Stu's on camera.
Oh, true.
I think this might be his first time ever, and he still figured out a way to hide behind this microphone stand somehow.
Yes. Oh, that is a great shout, actually.
Good
well
call.
done. Well done. Well, today's going to be a fun format because we're going to kind of do our normal show for KTRS in the first 45 minutes. But then the wind down will be just like Q&A, and we'll fit in whatever conversation comes up. I'm so excited about that portion. So stick with us if you can. Oh, they can't hear Stu. That could be a problem that well, it's going to be a problem. We can hold on. Let's pause and we can edit this out.
That's how the sausage gets made sometimes.
I know. See, I can hear him.
Only on Flyover, though. When we do fallouts,
I know.
When we do fallouts, Santi and I just go. Like, I don't worry about editing fallouts.
Stu, say something. I think I got it.
All right, that's.
All right, chat. Tell us if Stu is on. We got to wait a few
Put that
seconds
mic
there's
to
a
his
delay.
mouth. The Tim Ream coffee mug has failed us.
Luckily, I think that's going to make it to the podcast, but
Now we get to always see like what the delay is between when we ask something of chat.
it's long. It's like
I've
30
seen that.
seconds, 45 seconds.
That explains the trivia thing.
Still,
Why it took forever to get answers on trivia. Nah, nope.
they're saying no. I don't know if I can fix this for the live chat.
Do we? Hey, I was gonna start us off with another trivia. Do you want to do
Yeah,
that?
let's
I can
do
do
that.
that while
Let's
you
do
fix
that.
that. That way, trivia doesn't go on the pod anyway. This one's gonna be for the live for the folks here, and the question is. Oh, I almost hurt to do this question. In 2 seasons, how many matches did Indiana Vassilev appear for in St. Louis City?
Topical. Stu, give me a guess so we can test your mic.
Appearing in a St. Louis City kit. It could be for MLS, Leagues Cup, Open Cup, playoffs, regular season.
Say that into your mic though, Stu.
77's pretty close, but Price is Right rules, you lose.
Say it nice and loud. Test.
75.
75.
Indiana Vassilev in 2 seasons with St. Louis City appeared in 75 matches, scored 6 goals, and had 9 assists. Raise one. Cheers to Indiana Vassilev. It won't be the last time we do this tonight.
Okay, I don't think we've gotten something saying that Stuart is working. Chat, can
Billy
you
Shue
say-
had it in chat. I wonder how long ago that was.
Right.
Nice job, Billy. I don't have anything for you. Today was just fun trivia. Maybe Tim will give his Indiana Vassilev jersey to somebody down the line. You never know what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of them. I bet if somebody, and this would be kind of a fun thing to see, if the first game in 2 days, more people wore their Indiana Vassilev jerseys as just a sign of respect for not just what he meant, but man, the suddenness of his departure, which isn't even official yet, by the way. I bet it'll be official tomorrow because the roster has to be locked in by tomorrow. Yeah.
Are we getting a Morales signing?
Does that make room for the Morales? That's something we should.
Am I the only naysayer about whether Morales is going to be signed? Like maybe I'm reading too little into his preseason appearances, but we're gonna talk about it.
No fires.
No smoke. The smoke usually goes off around this time anyway.
Yeah.
Like this time, maybe a little later. I always feel like right before we start recording regular. 34, I think. Yeah, which is why we couldn't believe that it was actually him at first. Yeah.
Morales is a guy who seems eternally like he's 24 because he was like 22 when he broke through in Bundesliga. And then he just
You're gonna have to. I bet you're gonna have to hold the mic or something.
Well, even holding it up here, picking it up.
We hear him through the speakers at the venue, just not on the
So
stream.
this is just going to have to be, again, a classic Phil. I should have tested this last week or something, but we're not going to get Stu in the stream. I'm so sorry, everyone, but I am going to be able to record you. But we are going to have to back up to your introduction.
Do you want me to scoot my mic?
You
over
good with
to you?
that? That would help, actually. Yes. Will it reach is the question.
You're gonna end up on camera.
There we go. That will help.
Are you gonna pick up some weird ambient noise if you have 2 microphones going?
Quit
Nope.
complaining.
Nope. Keep using yours, but
That's just not how it
we're
works,
good.
man. I always complain.
okay.
Okay, be careful about that.
Ready?
Just-
Ready.
We'll just jump in with Stuart.
I feel like we're your backup singers.
It does feel like there's some space here. Finally, the show is the way I've always planned it to be.
I'm gonna use this to like twist.
Oh, perfect. Yes, that will work.
If I twist, or if he brings his
Putting
sword.
both mics right there. That's a really smart move.
All right, let's go.
All right, you ready? And we have Stuart Holtgren here today. He's already doing well because he's got his Tim Ream mug to support him. He's using it as a mic stand. Perfect. Stuart, how are you doing today?
Well, the Ream mug's not working anymore, so
There have been technical issues, but I think we're going to be okay. Hopefully the stream can hear your voice now. We are definitely recording it. So there's that. Whoops. Are you guys hearing that?
Yeah.
There we go. See? More problems. Let's do it one more time. We also have Stuart Holtgren here, of course. We're doing this the third time. I apologize. But I have to make the same joke the third time. We've got the Tim Ream mug for support for you today. We're using it as a mic stand.
I'll show it this time.
Thank
so
you.
everyone can see it. Yeah, it's from the official Fulham store, but that's why I was joking. The quality on this does not look like something you'd find in like a Premier League. It's just kind of like
That's wild.
send this to Hobby Lobby and they'll put your picture on it for Father's Day or something.
And I just watched a video saying the Fulham is like the posh club in England. I think this is proof that perhaps it's not.
Oh, well, they also sell cheese boards.
Uh-huh.
Oh man, it's certainly, I mean, it's West London, traditional, all those clubs are more focused on working class, but it is a very wealthy part of West London, which is the wealthiest part of London. So yeah, it's definitely posh.
It'd be like if there was a stadium in like Ladue. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
More like Central West End, maybe.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. There might be some cheese boards if there was a stadium.
We were able to do a live pod, and we turned this into a Fulham show somehow.
I can't help myself sometimes. Well, yeah, just to say, this is, as it is a live show, we are going to have a normal KTRS show in the first 45 minutes. And then for the wind down, if you listen on the podcast, we are going to do like a Q&A and just kind of break it down with live conversation with anyone who wants to come to the mic today. So it's going to be a really fun show here at Blue Jay Brewing. And I'm excited to get started. Matt, let's jump into some other kind of setup for this show before we dig into the news.
Yeah, so the flow of the show is going to be a little different, obviously. I do want to remind folks that on our podcast feed, we do have a big MLS preview. So we're not going to tie into the larger league right now, but can't tout my interview with Ben Wright enough. 615 Soccer, Backheeled, MLS Soccer, Gimme Sport. Ben Wright knows his stuff. And if you haven't listened to the pod, please do. That'll give you everything you need to know about this season. Kudos to him for joining. Can't wait to have him back. We've got some late breaking news that has completely blown up our show notes. And we are going to get to Colorado and St. Louis. So we are going to look at not just the match day one, but a look at the depth chart, a look at what we can expect from St. Louis this season. So there's a lot packed into this show.
Well, like you said, some news broke like a couple hours ago that just completely blew up the notes. Matt has these things going all week pretty much. And this hit at the last minute. And, I went through a roller coaster of emotions because the sadness, the disappointment, maybe we can be happy for him. There's a lot of money involved, which is nice. Some rumors about maybe he wanted to go. Who knows none of this is official yet, but I think it's official enough since it's been announced by Tom Bogert to talk about it. Matt, if you want to kind of get us started.
Yeah, this is unofficially official now. If you haven't heard as of the listening of this podcast or the live stream, Indiana Vassilev is being sold to the Philadelphia Union. This was first reported by Tom Bogert on Thursday. Indy is on his way to Bradley Carnell's Philadelphia Union for a large GAM transfer rumored to be $1 million plus $200,000 in add-ons. I think this makes it the second largest deal in St. Louis City history behind Nico Gioacchini.
Wild.
And it also makes for quite the haul that we landed on that first super draft. I think that might be a record setter for the amount of GAM that somebody can get from one super draft. This has layers to it. So we know the start of the season is 2 days away. So that's one layer. I think one of the reasons we're going to spend some time on this isn't just because it's Indiana Vassilev. If you're tuned into our live stream or are here at Blue Jay, you heard my trivia before we started that Indiana Vassilev has competed in 75 matches for St. Louis City. I need to run the numbers on how that lines up historically in these first two seasons. But if you remember, there was a point last season where Indiana Vassilev had a streak where he was the only St. Louis City player to appear in every single game. That lasted for a long time. And so this might be a record. This might not be something that's broken for a while. Notable, obviously, that it's a new head coach. It's also notable how close Indiana Vassilev was with Bradley Carnell. I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to say that Indy took the firing of Bradley Carnell the hardest of anyone. At least publicly, he took it the hardest of anyone. He told us last year that this was the first coach he played for that was fired while he was playing for them. So there's a lot that went into Indy's feelings. And, you know, he's only 24 years old, 23 at the time. This is him letting out his emotions and processing it very publicly. And so I've seen some comments about Indy's emotional state and his attachment to Bradley Carnell. And a lot of the things I'm seeing are completely unwarranted. I mean, this is a young player on the rise of his career who found success, and arguably the most success, under a specific head coach who was unceremoniously fired. It's natural for that to be his reaction to that. So there's two other aspects to this that I want to get before I turn it over to you guys. One of them is Olaf Melberg. So you transition to a new coach with a new system, with a wing back, 3 center back look. It's a numbers game on some of these. Yeah, you're going to have competition for some of your spots, but at the end of the day, we've talked about what we expect our depth chart to look like with St. Louis City. In a 3-4-1-2, you have Klaus and Teuscher up top, you have Hartl in the middle, and right now you have Wallem and Totland as your wingbacks. With Leuven and Durkin in the midfield, there's not a lot of space for Indy, presumably, unless he's fighting for his spot, unless he beats one of those players out, which isn't to say he can't beat out Wallem, or he can't beat out or wait for an injury. You know, there's value, obviously, in that depth. The other factor in this is something that our friend Taylor Twellman sent out into the ether shortly after the rumors broke on this. If you saw my quote tweet of this, you probably didn't want to see what was going through my brain before I sent that, because that was the PG version. Taylor Twellman sent out, quote, Vassilev made it known to his teammates at City that he didn't want to be there anymore, so good business by the club to find the right deal. And my reaction to this is nuanced, because on the one hand, $1 million plus $200,000 for a 24-year-old who just appeared for the national team and doesn't have a secured starting spot on the team is good business. That's without a doubt. This is the second biggest deal in St. Louis City history behind Nico Gioacchini. That is without a doubt. The problem I have is for Taylor Twellman, former player, obviously Taylor Twellman, who is just in St. Louis, to make public things that are said in the locker room as if he's doing damage control for the team. I was frustrated and miffed a little bit to see, and I think I said, I'm going to bring some of our DMs out because this has me irked.
Now I'm scared.
I posted in our DMs, I think, I don't have them in front of me, but one of 3 things happened. If Taylor Twellman could be believed here and at face value, either a player currently playing for St. Louis City told Taylor Twellman what Indy said, a staff member heard Indy tell the player and then told Twellman, or what was the third one? The player, a player who heard that, who wasn't actually in the conversation with Indy, told Twellman. Either way, this doesn't look good. This is damage control is one thing on making it seem like the club was doing the smart thing when you have a disgruntled player. Keep it private. If we learned anything from St. Louis City in 2024, it's that you do not want to air this dirty laundry. As the guy who was standing right in front of Bradley Carnell when he told us what was happening with Sam Adeniran, and he was oversharing in a lot of people's opinions, I think this is a lesson that needs to be learned, and it needs to be learned right now by the club. Whether Twellman just did this on his own volition or somebody from the club told him, this was too far to me. And I didn't like how it turned out. I don't think it's fair to Indy. I don't think it's fair to the team. If Indy's going to say something to the team, let him say it. If a teammate has something to say about that, go to the front office. Keep it internal. We don't need to be having this conversation. We don't need to know about disgruntled players, because now you speculate, why was he disgruntled? Was it a player-coach issue? Is there a problem with the coaches and the players? These are conversations that don't need to be had because they probably don't exist, but now we're here speculating, and it's in our minds because Twellman has put this into the world.
I keep thinking, like, who benefits from that message? So that's something I keep thinking about. I haven't come to any conclusions by any means. But Stuart, how did this news strike you today?
I mean, I was pretty blindsided like everyone else, I think. Indy is maybe the most beloved player on the roster, or was at this point. I mean, obviously Berkey is up there, is maybe number 1, cemented up there. But Indy, everyone loves Indy. He plays hard. He gives it all, his all. He's there healthy. Like Matt said, being healthy is a massive skill in MLS, and Indy's been healthy. He's been versatile. Outwardly, he's done everything that's been asked of him. So to get a tweet or message out from Taylor Twellman that there was some sort of consternation there was a little surprising as well. But I think, and we were talking before while we were setting up over here, Chris and Tim and I and Phil, you were part of that discussion about, that's just also kind of how soccer works. Coach change, like Matt said, and new coach is looking for new things. He had a couple months to evaluate Indy, and it's for whatever reason the relationship just wasn't going to work. So we get it out now before the season starts, and we wish Indy the best in Philadelphia, and he'll have a lot of good service on that left side with Wagner giving him balls. So hopefully he kills it when he's not playing St. Louis, and we'll see him in a few matches. Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard a podcast talking about them maybe setting up in a 4-2-3-1 as Carnell did with us, and how they don't have any true wingers. So this could also help them transition. He could be a leader, a culture guy for Carnell. A lot of knowns for this move for Carnell and Indy. And I agree with everything Matt said. And Stu, we all said that stuff today, but I think it's a good way to end. That perhaps we can be happy for Indy, and hopefully he has his best years in Philly going forward. If not, for him, also for the national team. I've been so excited about his progress and making it to January camp, and I've enjoyed his being able to interchange with a lot of our new fancy players. I was really excited about some of the interchange with Vassilev that we saw that led to a goal, and so I thought he was going to unlock some of his best potential with City this year, but clearly he's going to a place where he considers himself to be better used. Maybe he'll get more minutes. Totally understand. So we wish him the best, of course. Let's end on a positive note there. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you for joining us live here at Blue Jay Brewing. Matt, let's get into Colorado if we can.
Yeah, Colorado Rapids come to City Park, or Energizer Park rather, on Saturday. So there's some health information I think we want to know. Not just the lack of availability for Indiana Vassilev, who we do wish him well. I want to get my point in on that too, that, I've got an Indy jersey at home, and he's a great guy. I dressed as him for Halloween a couple of years ago, if anybody remembers that. That was a good time. Wishing Indy the best in Philadelphia. I think he's going to really excel, and we know he has a good coach who is in his corner. With the roster that we currently have, there are some things to know. Let's start with Cedric Teuchert. I think he is the player that we're all wondering the most about, because he missed the first Coachella game due to the groin management issue that we reported. But he also missed the second and third games, and we really weren't sure what was going on until, credit to Tom Timmerman from the Post-Dispatch, who broke this one, that Cedric Teuchert had traveled back to Germany to get his green card. This confirmed that Cedric Teuchert was the player that we reported earlier this preseason who was in the process of getting his green card. This means that St. Louis is now down to 8 international players: Berkey, Klaus, Alm, Hartl, Jake Girdwood-Reich, Timo Baumgartel, Jonas Horn, and Conrad Wallem. Serendipitously, this is the amount of international roster slots that every MLS team starts with, so we do not need to acquire any as it currently stands. Morales, the center midfielder who has been at trial list, and we don't know if he's going to be signed. As of Thursday, he has not been signed. He is an American. He will not take up an international slot, so that's good to know. Teuchert himself, though, should have been traveled back to St. Louis on Wednesday. That means that he hasn't played a preseason game in quite some time. I would not expect to see him start, but it would not surprise me at all if he makes the matchday roster and appears on Saturday. He's healthy. Then there's no issues with that we know of. On the other hand, Chris Durkin, I would expect to be questionable for Saturday. Still dealing with the knee issue from last season. Didn't have a surgery or anything, so I want to reiterate the way we talked about earlier this season. Hasn't participated in any preseason games, though, so far. So similar to Teuchert in that regard, he's not match fit. We would not expect him to play. Jake Girdwood-Reich is even further in doubt. Questionable would probably be generous to talk about with JGR. He had an illness that kept him out of the Florida camp, lower body procedure this offseason, missing all the preseason games. One thing I found kind of weird, notable, I don't know, maybe it's nothing, is that if you look in the City app, JGR still has his picture from last season. So he seems to have missed content day as well. I don't know what that means for where he was, what he was doing, but if he wasn't at content day, he wasn't at training around content day, I don't know. Doesn't bode well for this weekend at the very least. We'll continue to monitor those guys' updates. Beyond that, with the sale of Indiana Vassilev, the roster sits at 2 open roster slots. And it's notable right now that we haven't announced anything. And the MLS roster lock date is tomorrow, I believe, the day before the first matches. So the sale of Indiana Vassilev, coupled with 2 open roster slots, leaves room to add to this roster. There are 3 super draft picks and 3 super draft picks that have not been signed. There's Alfredo Morales, who has not been signed. So there's still room to work before our first match, before this roster locks in. And along with the roster lock, that means that we have to, as a club, tell MLS what construction model of roster we're going with. Are we going the DP route, the U22 route? With all the GAMS talk from Indiana Vassilev, there's a question of, do we want to buy down Roman Berkey to only have 2 DPs, have 4 U22 slots, and get $2 million more in GAM? Because we're accruing a lot of GAM as it stands. But circling back to the players, we have 3 super draft picks that we have not signed. Emil Yaskalenin, Joey Zielinski, and Colin Welsh isn't going to be signed because he's a 4th goalie. But the other 2, question marks. We don't know where they're going to land yet.
Stuart, what do you think? What would you do? I know you've been a big fan of Morales. So I wanted to give you a chance to chat about it if you wanted.
I don't know if I've necessarily been a huge fan of him, but I mean,
sorry, that's me. I'm a big fan.
I was, I really liked what he did on the, what was that against San Jose? The second goal. I'm blanking on
NYCFC.
Yeah. So I liked what I saw. I'm a little biased because I followed him back when he was breaking through on Jurgen Klinsmann's kind of radar 12 years ago, 13 years ago, which is aging myself slightly. But I also like Yaskalenin. I think Zielinski will end up with City 2. Like Matt said, Colin Walsh is probably a City 2 signing, and he'll get his shot to start a few games over there.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it's I would say that's one nice thing is that 2 slots is a lot more than we expected at this point, didn't we, Matt?
It is. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about having 1 slot, but we always talk about Lutz wanting flexibility, and that's something I expected. I never expected him to fill the last remaining roster slot because he wants to have this extra flexibility because we do still have some players on loan. And if you bring a player back from loan before the next transfer window, when their loans are up, I mean, this gives you flexibility to bring back Nuke Thorson, Jabulu Blom, anybody you need to. Whether or not that's actually possible is a different question, but Lutz has always talked about wanting to maintain roster flexibility.
Also of note, no other loan announcements. Stu looked like he had something.
Yeah, but we have a supplemental roster spot as well if we want to sign a homegrown, correct?
Supplemental's full with the 4 homegrowns. So we're good there.
I thought so. Okay. Well, let's talk about the Rapids, Matt. Why don't you lead us into some information that we're going to need? Pretty cool. They just played the Champions Cup. That doesn't hurt us, right?
Makes it easier to analyze them. That's for sure. Yeah. Reggie Cannon got hurt. Good call there, Daniel. So Champions Cup 2-1 win over LAFC at home on Tuesday. The biggest thing about this is, well, not just that they scored 2 goals, not in the run of play. So we got to see Georgi Mihailovic's highlights. Yeah. Reggie Cannon was hurt in this game, but per his Instagram that Stu pointed out, he said that he is good. So defender Reggie Cannon, we expect him to play according to him as much as you want to trust the player themselves. The initial thought was from Chris Armas when he was hurt that he was in agony, but structurally he was fine. So optimistically, we expect to see Reggie Cannon. A couple guys we don't expect to see, Ted Ku DiPietro. I'm going to mess that name up a few times. Ku DiPietro was signed as a U22 for the Cash for Trades deal a couple weeks ago from Colorado. He had shoulder surgery in the offseason. Their newest U22 didn't play on Tuesday, and he's not expected to play against St. Louis. Good news for us. Sam Vines, left back, and Andreas Maxo, center back, have lower body injuries. They are likely out, according to Colorado media. And Connor Ronan, center defensive midfielder, took a knock in practice on Tuesday, did not play in Champions Cup, and is questionable probably for this weekend. Beyond that, I mean, Colorado, they played a match. That's one of the biggest things. They qualified for Champions Cup because they were 3rd in last year's Leagues Cup. They ran out, arguably, their ideal starting 11 in the coldest game they've ever played in their club's history. The cold played a factor the first half in this game. They saw 4-1. They were outshot 4-1 by LAFC. The Rapids were at 51% possession in the first half. They scored at 48 minutes. They scored at 80 minutes. And in the second half, it was massively notable to me that after taking the lead around 48 minutes with a PK from Georgi Mihailovic, that LAFC dominated the possession to the point where the Rapids had just 23% possession in the second half. They bunkered, and I would expect them to do the same if they can get a lead against St. Louis. That's very notable. It's also not going to be that much warmer. I think it was super cold in Colorado, yeah, but it's only going to be about 25 degrees or so around kickoff if our friend Steve Templeton with KMOV has anything to say about it. And I think that's something that you have to follow with the Rapids is they didn't score a goal in the run of play. They weren't overly efficient in any of their shots. I didn't see anything that was too dangerous in this first game, but it's the first game. It's something where you're still, we were in CONCACAF Champions Cup. We understand the rust that you have to get worked off. So there's a glass half full, empty approach to this of they ran out their ideal starting 11 in the cold in a midweek match. But also that allowed them to get a little experience. They can have fitness, and it's going to be 5 days? 5 days is fine as far as recovery for soccer players. That's not a massive deal. Now their next match, I think, is this coming Tuesday. They're going to have some things to work through on that as far as regen and recovery. But against us, I expect to have a pretty good starting lineup going into MLS. Chris Armas was not afraid to play the smart game. Like I said, the Rapids had 226 accurate passes in the first half, just 63 in the second. So, I'm not asking to imagine is 223 or 226 a lot. Just know 226 versus 63. That's how much they bunkered and ceded possession to LAFC. Something that they could do if they get a lead, but if not, they are a pressing team. This is a team that runs out of 4-2-3-1. They have mostly their lineup from last year. They are a pressing team, so they're going to be aggressive, and they beat us twice last year. This is a mostly put together Rapids team from last year that beat us twice. So they know how to take care of an aggressive St. Louis team. They know how to take care of a Bradley Carnell St. Louis team and a John Hackworth. But we'll see if Olaf's look can change any of that. Biggest thing for the Rapids is their cohesion. They're starting 11, mostly the same from last year. They just had 3 differences in their lineup, 2 center backs and a right winger, Cheeto Awaziem and Ian Murphy, who made their Rapids debuts coming over in a trade, and then Omir Fernandez at right wing. They've got firepower, though. They've got Rafael Navarro at striker. They have Georgi Mihailovic at attacking midfield slash second striker. Cole Bassett in the midfield. Keegan Rosenberry as a Thomas Totland-like fullback. They've got Zach Steffen in between the pipes. They've got a lot of star power, a lot of names. And at the beginning of last season, they did all of their damage. They had a really rough stretch, so we'll probably talk about in a minute, but this is the Rapids team that liked to start strong last year, and I have a feeling they're going to take this win and look to build momentum.
It's a very practical team, not unlike maybe even St. Louis at the beginning of last year and in the previous year. And LAFC gave them a very practical game to practice bunkering in after they take the lead, and that's something you can expect from Colorado. I expected more from Chris Armas, Stuart, former Leeds United coach, co-coach with 2 other guys, I think was the deal that was going on there. But he's upgraded as a coach by all conversation. So I expected maybe a little more than no goal through run of play and this much practicality going on, but they sure got the win. So maybe I'm being too harsh. What do you think of that? Or what do you think about Colorado coming to St. Louis?
Right, it's cold. You're playing when it's cold.
True.
You're exhausted. Your lungs hurt. It's February 21st, 20th when they played. We experienced it last year. February 22nd when we play Houston. Yeah. Like Matt said, the rust is there. I think getting out of that game with a win is going to be a huge positive for Colorado. And Matt, you said they play the second leg on Tuesday, correct?
I think so.
Yeah. So you said you expect a full Colorado Rapids starting 11 that's healthy, but do you think Armas is going to hold some firepower back for that second leg that's going to be in LA? LAFC is going to come at Rapids hard. Warm weather. We might get a break there.
Completely agree. That's a good point.
Rotation, I would expect. I don't know if they're going to rest some of their stars like Navarro and Mihailovic, I would say. Because I remember what we did in we ran a pretty good lineup at the first game, I think. MLS season opener against RSL. We ran our pretty much ideal 11 at the time. We were missing some guys, but it was that away game against Houston we rotated, I remember. And so I just wonder if Armas is going to do something similar.
Yeah. Flyover Footy is what you're listening to right now on the big 550 KTRS. We are live at Blue Jay Brewing, having a good time here. We got beers on the table next to us. I'm feeling really good. And Matt, we're making good progress here, but we have more to talk about as far as Colorado, and maybe even we can lead into St. Louis. And my favorite part, the lineups are on the horizon, which I'm excited to talk about. But it looks like you have a little bit more to talk about with Colorado here.
I gave you guys my starting 11 in our show notes, so I feel you're going to use that against me at some point.
Always.
I mentioned Colorado as a pressing team. Our friends at Burgundy Wave, Matt Pollard in Colorado, does a great job covering them. They expect them to attack and score goals while they'll allow plenty. They concede a good amount. They'll employ a double pivot, so that 4-2-3-1. I wonder how we're going to handle this first showing against a double pivot with our wingback system. That's going to be something to watch for me. I mentioned that Colorado beat St. Louis twice last season. When they did that, though, they did it two different ways. They had 54% possession and 46. So this isn't a team that goes one-dimensional, and they're able to beat St. Louis with what we were offering last season, at least, just by possessing or just by ceding possession and trying to let us do something. No, they were a pretty dynamic team, and they basically did what we wanted to do better than us last year.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So
that's what made it hurt more, in my opinion.
It did, because they had the system that really matched us. And it was an interesting matchup because it wasn't like two teams where against us versus Seattle Sounders, for instance. Seattle's a possessing team, or LAFC a possessing team, where we're going to try to score quickly and give them possession and work the ball in the midfield. But this was a team that whoever can be best at this one singular approach, and it was them last year. Could change this year with what Olaf Melberg has. We only know what to expect from St. Louis and what we saw in preseason. So we've got wingbacks. We've got playing the ball out of the back more. We have intentionally playing the ball around the middle third and looking for a quick strike in the attacking third. It's a different St. Louis City. I don't care what Lutz and Olaf have been saying about the consistency from last season. What I saw in preseason from St. Louis City was not the St. Louis City from 2024. It was St. Louis City 2.0, like Lutz said, where you can say that they wanted to be direct to goal, but they were waiting until the final third to be direct to goal. You can't say that you're direct to goal, back to front, if you're playing the ball out of the back and you're having, how many did we count? 17 pass possessions for the goal.
Yeah.
That was an insane amount. And yeah, it was one time, but we only scored, I want to say 5 or 6 goals in the preseason. So if you're looking at playing the ball out of the back with the center backs, I think something I want to see is how is St. Louis going to absorb the Colorado press? Playing the ball out of the back can be dangerous. 2 seasons ago with Austin, that incredible start to 2023, we made teams pay for playing the ball out of the back when we were aggressive with our press. If St. Louis is going to err towards letting Timo Baumgartel or Henry Kessler, Joachim Nilsson play the ball out of the back, then they're going to have to absorb the press of Colorado. Now, they did that well in the preseason. That was one of the things that I noticed really, really well done is they absorbed the press, and that's how they were able to create a numbers advantage in the attacking third, is you play these quick balls, short passes in the middle third into the attacking third. Once you get in there, you take advantage of the numbers as you let Colorado or let any other team come into the midfield in higher numbers. Looking back at the end of last season is an interesting tale of the tape for me. I mentioned that the Rapids are mostly intact from last season. St. Louis is mostly intact from the end of last season. So I looked at the last 8 games of 2024 to see how these teams fared, and they went in the opposite direction. One of the reasons that the Rapids fell a little bit, one of the reasons that they're not expected to do very well compared to City this year is because they fell off last year and they kept most of the same roster. They acquired Ted Kude-Pietro that we mentioned. They just got Josh Atencio as a midfielder, but more or less their goal scoring is intact, at least to start the season. And in the last 8 games of 2024, Colorado won 1 game and lost 7. Now that counts the playoffs, so they played LA Galaxy a couple times there. They had 7 goals and 23 goals allowed in these last 8 games. Juxtapose that with St. Louis. St. Louis was 4 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, last 8 games with 14 goals scored and 13 goals against. So you're looking at a St. Louis team that added firepower, but didn't markedly change their defense, didn't markedly change their backline or their tactics. So what I would expect is if you were looking for improvements from that last 8 games, you're going to see about the same goal scoring output, but you want to allow less. You want to have your 3 center backs do a better job defensively, allowing more players to drop back into the box. That should help against this Colorado team that looks to press, looks to take the ball in their attacking third right away and score. And that's going to be where the battle's won to me. It's looking at the back line of St. Louis. It's not something that I often say, and I don't think I ever said it in 2024, is the battle that I want to see the most is Colorado's attackers against St. Louis's defenders. If we can outmaneuver their attackers, if we can pull them into our defensive third, pull them into our midfield, and then do what we did in the preseason as far as orchestrate the ball through our wing backs up to get Hartle involved on either side, I think we're going to be effective.
Stu, I saw you nodding there. I'm curious what you have to think about that, but I'm also kind of curious, like, no goal through the run of play from them against LAFC. Is that something to be careful of? Do we need to make sure no PKs? Do we think about no free kicks given up to Mihailovic, or do you just play your game? Please fill in anything else you'd like to say about this.
Well, like Matt said, kind of tale of two teams last year for St. Louis City and for Colorado.
Jerry Hayes just made this exact point.
Yeah. Thumbs up, Jerry. But we last played Colorado and lost them 4-1 on 7/7, so July 7th. So that was before we got all of our summer reinforcements in. So I'm looking at our starting 11 that game, and we had Berkey, Bloom, Durkin, Vassilev, Watts, Parker, Nukvi, Wenzel, Klein, Kajima, and Reed. So definitely not our strongest starting 11, and by far weaker than the starting 11 we're going to put out on Saturday. So it's just so hard to gauge how any team played against St. Louis last year in the first half of the season with the reinforcements we brought in. And as far as set pieces, I don't know how Olaf does typically with his squads on set piece defense. I haven't seen any stats on that. Matt, you might know. Phil, you might know. But that would be something I'd be curious about. There were some things I noticed about our corner kicks against New York City FC. We seem to run the same play, top of the box, short corner kick, top of the box, cross in. And we did that, I think, twice in a row and 3 times in that game.
That's a good note. Thank you. Just want to kind of speak on some of the things Matt said. I agree, like being careful about building out of the back and, looking at what has worked early in preseason. It's kind of classic stuff for St. Louis City, even in previous seasons under Carnell. The press has worked early on, right? It wasn't capitalized on terribly well yet, but it does work for St. Louis City, even right now under Olaf. That hasn't changed. And so I think the difference is we're pressing high and then there's like no midfield. And then all of a sudden, if they bypass our press, we bunker, right? And so I think this game's going to be very little midfield from either team, unless one team forces the other into possessing the ball. A lot of direct play, a lot of just battling old school MLS style, I think, with the ball in the air in the cold, Colorado and St. Louis. This will be, I think, a fun battle. And I think we're going to start thinking in this game about the comments from Olaf about 100% all the time, never stopping, never shutting off, going and going and going. This is a good test of that mentality, in my opinion. We'll get that out of the first game. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS, live from Blue Jay Brewing. We have a few more things to talk about here before we do our lineups, and there's plenty of time, actually, Matt. I was jumping the gun a little bit there. So please dig into whatever you'd like to take us to next.
Yeah, I want to focus on St. Louis City. I want to talk about some of the big questions that I have going into the first game. The first one is, we'll talk about in a minute, cementing a starting 11. And I would argue that there's 7/11 of a starting 11 that is inarguable. You can't argue that these players are going to start. Other questions I have, the health of Chris Durkin and Cedric Toyshirt. Durkin is much more of a question mark to me. No, he did not have an operation. I saw in the chat, somebody asked, did he have anything? No, he didn't have anything done. Whether that's good or bad at this point, it's honestly hard to say, because if he doesn't get back on the field and something has to be done, that's a problem. If he comes back in the next couple of weeks, or if he's back in training and, maybe he's on the matchday roster against San Diego, that's something. But Chris Durkin is a massive question mark. Chris Durkin's a question mark because JGR is even more of a question mark, and that just makes our midfield look really run down. At this point, it's Edu Leuven and Akil Watts and Tomas Ostrak and Alfredo Morales, who's not even on the roster. Those are who we were running in preseason at our center mid position. So Durkin gone, JGR gone. We have depth at the center mid position. I think that's one thing right now that is kind of being forgotten, is that we do have depth. We have 3 players right now who can play a number 6, an out-and-out 6, if you're talking about Leuven being a box-to-box. Along with that, you still have Leuven and Ostrak, who are central midfielders. I mean, you've got 5 players for 2 positions. That's just fine on depth. I have zero problem with the players on our roster. I have a problem with the health of the players on our roster and whether in an MLS season you can absorb 2 players missing in one position for a significant period of time. That's where you have to start looking at short-term signings or loan call-ups, Cam Silly, for instance, type of a thing, or making a signing. And if you make a signing, I think you're backing yourself into a corner a bit. I have admittedly not been on the Alfredo Morales hype train as much as a lot of people. Not because I didn't see good things from him. I mean, you could argue that he might be a better quality player than what we've seen from Jake Girdwood-Reich at this point, because we've seen a lot, and in recency bias aside, we've seen a pretty good amount from Morales in Olaf's system in this preseason, and everything we've seen has been good. He's had really good passing. He led one of his passing sequences led directly to a goal, and he's just been strong with the ball. He hasn't had any turnovers that have been notable. But once you start talking about signing Morales, the long-term picture comes in of when JGR comes back. He's a U22 on a long-term contract that we've sunk money into. What happens to him? You can't say he can play center back too, because we've got 20,000 center backs on the roster. Even with 3 center backs, like, we're deep there. We don't need Jake Girdwood-Reich. That's why when he came on, he played in his original central defensive midfield role and not center back. So you get into issues with depth here long term. That's the conversation with Morales.
Miguel Perez too. Love to see him get minutes.
We forgot about Miguel Perez. Yeah, that's obviously another one. Miguel Perez, who plays that center mid position and did in preseason as well under Olaf. Big problem there when you're talking about Morales and the long-term depth of these. Now, you do have to wonder at this point, which I didn't even put down on my notes, but let's go ahead and ask it, what's going on with the homegrowns? We know that, and I'm going from memory here, Mekhi Joyner and Miguel Perez were the 2 homegrowns who remained with the team in California, and they didn't see very many minutes, admittedly. So you wonder, does the move for Indiana Vassilev free up a potential opportunity for Mekhi Joyner? You mentioned this, I think, earlier, Phil, on the left wing back side. That's a possibility, but Miguel Perez is still stuck. So what do you do about Miguel Perez? And these questions may be answered right after we publish this pod, because the roster lock day, the teams have to lock things down, make moves. I'm curious what they're going to be doing with some of these homegrowns.
Stu, do you have a preference, or what would you do, or what would you like to see?
I think Mickey's going to lock himself down with City for the most part this year. I think that season-long loan to City 2 has always been the most intriguing question. Which homegrown are we sending down for the whole season? Tyson Pierce took up that slot last year. He seems to make the most sense this year. I was
easy argument.
Yeah, I thought you were fact checking me live that Tyson Pierce is in. I was second guessing myself there for a second.
Oh, you're good.
No, it'll be really interesting. I'm huge on the Lorenzo Cornelius hype train. So that's earlier when I was mentioned supplemental slot. I was thinking about him getting a homegrown at some point this season, but we're full up there. So, gosh, Tyson Pierce, I think, goes to City 2, and I think Mickey stays.
Yeah, and to me, this is why you have homegrown players. This is why you keep someone like Miguel Perez on the senior roster instead of on loan, right? We have depth problems. They're short-lived, hopefully. Durkin's on the way back. JGR hopefully isn't gone very long. You use these players while you can. They need minutes. Give it to them. Maybe you get another draw or another loss here and there. I think for a little while, you ride that while you can. And that's one thing. I'm sorry, Stu, one more time. That's one thing that was unfortunate about Carnell is we just kept losing and losing and losing and losing. We never had a lead, and we couldn't give these homegrown players the minutes they needed last year. I hope we can flip that script just a little bit, and this is a good excuse to at least start the train. I'm not sure if it can continue. Sorry, Stu, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, just with has Miggy shown enough to entice a USL championship club again this year? He didn't get many minutes last year with Birmingham.
No, I think we need to make him look good for half a season if we can, just to bring his value back up. Even his transfer mark value dropped a lot last year. So.
I think we need to give Miggy a chance in this system.
I agree.
I think what we've seen in the past 2 years, and it's the small sample size, but City 2 has followed, Bobby Murphy's City 2 team has followed Bradley Carnell's lead on the first team. It's the John Hackworth, director of coaching, technical director. Lutz keeping the same organizational philosophy up and down. So I would expect City 2 to largely adjust to what Olaf is doing with the first team. And one of the things about being a player on this 30-man roster who doesn't see a lot of minutes, you remember Jake Nerwinski at the end of last season, they'll go down and play with City 2. Michael Wenzel, once he signed his first team contract, went down to play for City 2 quite a bit. I would expect we're going to see similarities here. And I think this is something that I wonder if we're going to take more advantage of with our homegrowns. Tyson Pierce was on that long-term loan last season. He was the off-roster homegrown. You get one of those per year. Makes sense. I agree with Stu that he could be that player. You only have 4 options. It's either Mekhi Joyner, Caden Glover, Tyson Pierce, or Miguel Perez. And it's not going to be Miggy. It shouldn't be Caden at this point. And Mekhi Joyner is arguably second in line for a left wing back spot. So I think Tyson Pierce makes sense, but all of these other players, all 3 of the other homegrowns, and even others who we're not talking about, are candidates for City 2. And it's going to happen week in and week out. I think we're going to see more of an alignment from City 2 to City as far as the wingback system. And it just means that even if the homegrowns aren't finding time with the main team, because we're deep, and this is a goal, we're wanting the homegrowns to only play for the main team if they deserve it, if they're ready for it. Yeah. And until they're needed for injury, keep them here, let them learn this system, because it's a whole different system, and find time with City 2, which is, I mean, we deride Next Pro a lot because of the politics of it all, but it's getting more and more competitive. The independent teams that they've added, the quality of players that MLS teams have been developing their academies coming up through this, the super draft picks at the high end, like it's a quality league. I'm not saying it's pushing USL Championship, but I think it's becoming more relevant as far as the value you can have keeping your players in your organization to develop versus sending them out on loan, which I was shaking my head vehemently against Miguel Perez because of what happened last year. You don't have control over the players when you send them out on loan, so it ends up in a situation where you're at the behest of whatever's going on. Sam Adeniran was a success on loan. Miguel Perez was a failure.
Oh, I wouldn't call it a failure. I think it was experience. I think it'll end up being a good part of his career in the long run, even if it wasn't the most fun for him.
The experience of going to a different city, valuable, yes. Yeah. I was not a fan of the playing time he got and the outside looking in perspective of his success on the field.
Yeah, another aspect to this is how Zielinski looked in preseason, which I thought he looked pretty good. So that frees up, if you have an emergency, call up for right back, you can bring up Zielinski instead of relying on a guy like Tyson Pierce. So you can send him down on that season-long loan to develop further.
Yep. Well, things are exciting. If you're excited about playing the kids, now's a good opportunity. And we're going to keep talking about it. We don't have much time to talk about the starting 11, so we'll go through this pretty quickly, and then maybe we'll talk about it more in the wind down.
I don't think there's much argument. My starting 11 is right, except for maybe one we could talk about.
Please give it. Let's go.
Roman Berkey's going to start in net. We're going to run 3 center backs with Joachim Nilsson, Timo Baumgartel, and Henry Kessler. Our wing backs are going to be Conrad Wallum and Thomas Totland. Edu Leuven and Akil Watts are going to play central midfield. Marcel Hartl at the center attacking midfield, and Klaus and Betcher are our 2 strikers. The only arguments I will entertain are at center back.
Holy cow. That's confident, dude.
Josh Yara is playing all 11 positions.
Now that is a good shout because my center back I was thinking Giannis Horn at left center back, but Yarrow played the most minutes in preseason. We talked about what that could mean, good or bad.
Yeah. Interesting. Stu, you go next.
I think the only different one I would have potentially, but he's been injured, is Durkin. But Durkin's obviously not coming in cold to this game and starting in the 11, and Watts was so impressive. Yeah, no, I got to go with Matt on this one.
Okay. Well, just to argue, devil's advocate over here, I can't not disagree with Matt. Come on. Horn, right? And the other funny thing, too, to think about is, like, we've mixed up players with different friendlies. So is Nilsson or Horn or Baumgartel? I think Kessler's in, no doubt about it in my mind. Those 3, I could see any 1 or 2 of those 3 being in the back 3 center backs. And I'm just curious, like maybe Nilsson is maybe dropped. I haven't said this out loud, but part of me wonders if maybe Nilsson is dropped because of the health issue. Maybe you save him for a rainy day to make sure he doesn't get hurt. He won't like that, right? And maybe it'll push him. But this competition, I think, is very tight. And I could see Horn in there, but I actually agree with what Matt said, which is Nilsson, Baumgartel, Kessler, Wallum, Leuven. I put Ostrak in over Watts and then Totland. And the reason I did that is because Leuven has been playing a more defensive role. He's been sitting back in more of a 6. And when Watts is in, he's trying stuff. I think he's looked amazing, but some of those things haven't been coming off. Whereas Ostrak can progress the ball to the final attacking 4. And I think he'll be very good at that. And I think he'll make things happen. He tends to be more productive than Watts in even a sub role. So I would just argue, I think Ostrak has been a little bit overlooked in the preseason, but I do agree that Watts has looked the best in that partner role with Leuven as far as the players that are available.
Yeah, I would not argue. I would not have a problem if Ostrak started with Leuven. I'm basing mine off of the preseason matches, the last 2 that saw Leuven and Watts start consistently together. So they had that chemistry. When Ostrak came in, he came in for Leuven. It was Morales that was coming in for Watts.
That's fair.
And I look elsewhere and I think, I don't know where, I'm looking at a depth chart right here that I made. I don't know where Wallam's going to have competition at the left wing back spot.
Right.
Because Celio Pompeu has not been playing as a wing back. When he's returned, he's been playing as a striker or even a central attacking midfielder when he subbed in. Right before we dropped back into a 5-4-1, he was a cam and he dropped back onto that left wing side because we bunkered. So Celio hasn't been playing left wing back. Hebert is not going to start at right wing back over Thomas Totland. And the only other conversation is Celio going to start over somebody? Celio and Ostrak are kind of on the same level as far as the recovery. And I don't know if they're either are ready for starting or if they've shown enough to be starting over somebody like Klaus, Betcher, Hartl, or even Watts.
Yep. Starting, no. I think Celio's a bet as a sub. He's looking great.
Celio's looking and he's looking good as a striker role. Like that's one of the things that's most exciting to me and shocking, honestly, is where Olaf has been employing Celio, because I had him plugged in as a wing back based on what we've seen with City 2 on up, and we're seeing him sub in for Klaus. So if you're looking at depth right now in the striker role, you're seeing Klaus and Betcher, even without Toyshirt, you're seeing Klaus and Betcher, and you have Alm and Celio who can sub in for them later on. So the subs that we would have going into this game, the 5 subs that we could potentially use if my starting 11 works out would be something like Rasmus Alm, Celio Pompeu, Tomas Ostrak, Kyle Hebert Giannis Horn. That's 5 right there.
Yeah.
You got Miguel Perez. You've got Makai Joyner. I mean, the next man up are pretty strong.
Yeah.
You aren't even having Toyshirt here. You aren't having Durkin. You aren't having JGR. I mean,
agree. Although I will say that if we're behind, I could easily see Celio coming in at a wingback spot. He would be just fine.
Sure.
Maybe even better than Mackay. He's done it before. And Hebert, if we're ahead, count on it, fellas. I think it's going to happen. All right. That's all we got time for in the main portion of our show. If you're listening on the Big 550 KTRS, we're Flyover Footy. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk. We're doing a Q&A here live at Blue Jay Brewing. So please join us in the podcast. If you're listening on the radio, give us a like, a follow, a review if you can. Otherwise, if you're joining us live or on the stream, if you can still hear us out there, please hang around. I'm going to get a drink, and we're going to have some fun. Bye, everybody.
thank you. Are we still on right now? Yeah, thank you everybody so much. If you have a question, I don't know how we're gonna do this, like line up or something later on, but grab a drink and we'll like shout out a question or something. Yeah, write your question on a coaster and toss it at us.
take off. My wife's requesting me to get home.
Oh, thanks for coming, Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta go? Thanks,
Yeah,
dude. I'm so glad you could
my
come.
wife's sending me pictures.
I feel you, yeah. I can relate. Did you eat that? Are you doing good?
Yeah, I ate before I came. I'm good.
I rushed straight from work, but I got through.
Amazing setup, dude. Like,
It's a little ghetto. So I'm really upset that I tested all 3 mics and it works in here.
Yeah.
But for some reason, even with all these buttons pushed, it's not sending Stu's 3rd channel.
boo.
So that's frustrating. I'll have to test that next
I'm
time.
gonna hype on our stream. So if you find us new flyover stickers, I replaced the floor with a QR code because I'm a corporate sellout.
No, I mean it's easier. That's with the
Let's see if it
Gen
works.
Z lights, right?
Let's see if it works live.
You haven't tried it?
No, I've tried it. It opens to. Tell your friends. Subscribe to us.
And the coasters.
And the coasters, yeah. I don't know if I'm gonna have those on Saturday, but maybe I will.
Not even music one.
Yeah. New coasters.
They look good. Look really
The amount of time that I stressed over that was insane.
good.
And I got the little banners working. Oh yeah, sound effects. I got called out on. I was like, I might have to just like fake it. And I realized, well, they've got cans. Parched.
You doing okay?
Yeah. What? No, I meant to get the thermos, so I'm just getting some of my tea in here for
Oh.
right now, but
Nice.
I
So-
ran out too quick.
We skipped the ranking stuff.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was gonna hit that at the bench.
Yeah,
Great.
I didn't cover it entirely. Like,
Well,
I guess we talked about it, but like,
no, but I think that was good.
okay, I see what you mean.
For
Okay,
the wind down, you
Yeah, no, I think
He thinks we got it.
Squishy no for projection. And Q&A and like 2 other things. That'll be 45 minutes.
oh, easily.
I'm kind of annoyed that they haven't announced any of like where the super drafts are doing. Now I feel I have to like double check my email and make sure I haven't gotten anything on it.
About when they'll be signed.
Hilariously, right after you talked about JGR and how like you didn't have a new pick in New Jersey yet, my wife sent me a Facebook, like a screenshot of a Facebook post where it like mentions stuff about JGR and that comment about he doesn't even have a pick with New Jersey yet.
Oh, there you
I know,
go.
and I was like, you literally just
People
said
are
that.
seeing it. I feel validated.
Everyone's saying it.
Where was the ranking thing, or was that in the wind down?
It was the one with the links.
Oh, this.
That one. So it's like talking about where people are projecting city. I think that could be fun. Like if we wanted to mention that, I think that could be fun because everybody's so all over the place and nobody knows what. Like, I think that's like,
MLS.
that's what
You can't predict that.
Exactly.
you can't. But there's like there's like consensus on some of these teams. Like you look at the backfield guys. Like Seattle's at the top of like everybody. LAFC's at the top. Austin is fairly at the top of just about, but like the middle chunk is kind of all over the place. Everybody hates San Diego. Most people hate Kansas City, which I support.
Remember how angry you were when you were at the bottom? And now it's like, yeah, obviously everyone's going to put San Diego.
But like it's crazy to me. Ben Wright has the highest with it 5, and then you've got 7, 11, 10, and 11. Like, but that's missing the playoffs. Yeah, well, technically, if you have to play, 9 go to the playoffs.
Oh, the plan isn't considered for us?
It is.
I thought so.
But like, I don't think there's another team. I haven't looked at every single. I don't think there's another team that has such a discrepancy between folks. Even San Jose, 10, 8, 10,
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
like 14. Okay, yeah, but up to
San
12.
Jose then.
I think we're the most up and down. Even on MLS, there's 2 that have us 13, 1 that has 15, there's a 4, there's a 5. Like, there's no justifiable reason that you could argue. I think this. You have two people look at the same team. You're like, okay, this is a 4th place team. No, this is a 15th place team. Come on. At least with Gimme Sport, they just said, all right, Tom, you just go get it. They're not going to have like this consensus crap.
I like consensus better.
I do when it makes sense. Like, I play fantasy football, and I hate where you look at the nuts and bolts of a consensus ranking, and it's like, all right, somebody's ranked 8th. A QB is ranked 8th because you've got one guy that says he's 2nd, and then 3 guys that say he's like the 17th best. It's like, something's wrong. That's why I like looking at the specific ones. All right, you guys ready to go?
I'm ready.
I'm done talking off air.
So we will just go straight to Q&A.
Go straight to Q&A.
And then we'll throw that in.
Yeah.
Would you say that's your number one thing you want to talk about? Or what is? If not,
Yeah. As if we need filler or organically, I might people. Yeah.
cool. I think I'll just have people raise their hands.
If they want to, yeah, or they can just shout it out.
That's probably easiest. We're all right here.
All right, everyone. I think we're going to give it a try. We're going to thought about getting a beer, but you brought a Diet Coke for sound effects.
Yeah, we've got to have the.
Yeah, so we're going to do the thing. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Wind Down. There it is. That's your Diet Coke.
The live in person at a brewery opening is a soda.
Yes. It's your.
But it's because I have a draft beer.
Yes.
I do have a nice Pilsner.
I'm just glad we got our bases covered. I'm impressed. For me, especially. This is the kind of stuff that would be overlooked in a show that I put together.
Things you have to figure out on the fly, where you go and get a beer and you realize you just got a draft beer and you ruin the whole shtick.
Well, as you know, we've got a beautiful view around here. We have mellow tones in the bar area. We have brewing industrial tones on the left side here. And in the middle, we have all of our friends who are ready to ask questions for the wind down.
Before we get to the questions real quick, I want to give on the wind down just another shout out to Blue Jay Brewing staff, owners.
So good.
Thank you so much for hosting us.
Farm Spirit
with the food.
Oh, I had a hot dog that had gumbo on it. It was just incredible. Recommend.
So I've known Jason for a long time with Blue Jay Brewing, and when he opened this, we were excited. My wife and I, not just because we knew his beer from elsewhere, not just because he was trained by my wife's uncle. So there's a history here. He just has such an amazing location, an amazing beer that he brews. The ambiance here is fantastic pre-game. So I mentioned it earlier, but if you get a chance to come before any City games or even on non-game days, like, it's packed here with City fans, and it has gotten better and better and more lively as the years have gone on. And it's just a fantastic experience. It's just a few blocks from Energizer Park, honestly. Like, and with the parking situation that is at Energizer Park, like, parking around Blue Jay is
easy.
It's easy, and it's a quick, simple walk down Energizer Park and back. And it is one of probably the easiest places to get out from at the end of the night, which is probably one of the more important things.
A little hint for getting out quickly: the further north you go, the less traffic. It's a good trick. I go pretty far.
Yeah, or you head east and then go around downtown and go down Tucker.
Yeah, very true. Okay, well, Q&A. If you guys have a question, just shout it out. I think it's going to be the easiest way to go about it. So,
or I know it's a
raise your
long
hand.
bar. If you're at the other end of the bar, you can shout it out, or come down here. We'll give you a mic if you want.
So I'm just gonna a little bit of silence here for anyone that has a question. Go.
Woo!
All right.
Now you got to say your name since you came and got the mic.
My name is Derek Hall. All right. So, given the news with ND, don't hate me. Klaus.
Oh boy.
I'm concerned with the production. Given that Betcher's been really good for us since he started. He's on loan currently, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Are any of the moves today to make room? Right? When is his loan up?
Betcher's loan is up at June, at the end of June, and he has options for a few years after that. I would say Betcher being signed to a deal is a pretty safe bet at this point. If you get good odds on any of the gambling sites, if you choose to do that, take it, because Betcher is proving himself. I mean, not just at the end of last season. What was the stat that I had? He led the team in expected goals per 90, I think it was. He had 4 goals at the end of the stretch, and he's doing what a striker wants to do, right? But I would expect us to sign him.
Okay. Yeah, and and like I guess the other spot would be for the summer signings that we like to do potentially. I don't know. So
is the question more about who you want to see us sign? Do you think we'll sign another striker, or is it related to Klaus? Because we could
both.
I'll take the.
I'm concerned.
I'll take the opening on Klaus. Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do have a question in response to that, which is, does anybody know what date Klaus scored his last goal for St. Louis City?
He didn't score one when he came back.
No, he didn't.
He went 11 straight matches without scoring.
Did he get an assist at the end of the year?
Nope.
Ouch.
Or is it April?
May's a pretty close guess. It's actually June 22nd, 2024 against Atlanta United. It was a 1-1 draw. That was Klaus's last goal. Now, I like Klaus as a person, as a player. I like his role on the team. But it is obvious that he has not done the job that you ask your number 9 striker to do. That was a huge problem in bridging the gap, as Bradley Carnell said at one point, between all the injuries that occurred versus getting Toyshirt and Hartl and Jonas Horn and Simon Betcher in. When you have an attacking number 9 who turns out he likes to play more with his back to goal, he likes to come back to the ball deeper in the field and then distribute just as much or more than he does actually being the outlet like Simon Betcher has been at the end of last season and in this preseason, you're going to have a problem if you don't have those around him. Now, I wonder if Klaus had more time with Hartl and Toyshirt in their form in Bradley Carnell's and John Hackworth's system, if we would have seen a different result as far as his maybe assist numbers at least, or goal contributions. But preseason has not been kind to Klaus in that regard, and he's up against a comparison naturally in Simon Betcher. Because if you could argue where St. Louis is running a 3-4-1-2, 3-4-2-1, you can't argue that Simon Betcher has outproduced Klaus last season into this preseason. I don't think yet Klaus is on a short leash, but I think Simon Betcher is going to be signed to a longer term deal. But I also know that Klaus's contract is up at the end of this year, and he has an option for next year. So he's also on a DP contract that cannot be bought down. That you can't forget that. So you need production from your DP number 9. You don't sign a DP 9 to distribute the ball. End of the day. Klaus has been honest, and he told me this at Media Day this year, that he went through personal and professional issues last year. I don't want to know anything more than that, other than his headspace was not there. Very obvious. So he talked about how he's worked very specifically with his trainer in not just his ability to stay healthy, which we haven't seen in 2 seasons, but all of the mental aspects that go into being a striker, which we've heard pretty consistently from St. Louis City strikers over the past 2 years. And I'm kind of getting tired of hearing about it. But I think that this is his opportunity to show that he has a fresh start with a fresh coach, and he can make those changes that he needs to. But there is going to be a little bit of a hot seat in the first few games, especially if Simon Betcher continues his performance, and you have the numbers game that we talked about with Indy on why it makes sense for Indy to go in that regard, where you have Klaus, Betcher, and Toyshirt for 2 roles. And you can't continue to start Klaus when Betcher is performing, and we know what Toyshirt is capable of.
It's interesting if you throw in Opoku as a possible signing for this half of the season that didn't work out, right? That might come in the winter. If you add him into the equation, I don't even think he's like a Klaus type. Jaskalainen is. And so, I think it's interesting that we're in a two-striker system. I do think Klaus and Betcher are good for each other. I don't think they're too much alike. I don't really think they're going to be competing for the exact same role. So I'm not worried about that. And I can't help but remember before the first kick happened, before even preseason, Klaus was signed and Lutz said, we may not get production from our number 9. What we care about is him leading the line, being a hard worker. And so part of me also wonders, it's pretty damning. Like you said, Matt, a DP striker is, you pay the money, you need the goals. But if he just gets turnovers, if he just knocks the ball down for everyone else to score goals, is that valuable enough to keep him around? I don't know. It's possible that Lute's comment says yes. It's possible they've changed their minds at this point. A lot could happen. What do you think, Stu?
Yeah, I mean, he does a lot of things off the ball that you like to see, but the ball in the net is obviously what matters the most. But at the same time, we've seen what Klaus can do in 2023. I think one thing that makes Klaus kind of a magnet of attention, criticism, and not in a bad way necessarily, is he just has a really weird gait with how he runs. And I think I'm serious. I'm totally serious that I think it's just he kind of runs and lumbers awkwardly, and it, for better or worse, attracts more attention to him. And
What was the Twelman thing that he called him? Like a horse or something?
like a
Gazelle?
running, yeah, baby
Deer,
gazelle,
yeah.
baby deer, something like that, wounded deer. And one reason why I think about this, not to bring it back to Fulham or to bring it back to Fulham and do a complete 360 on this podcast, is Anthony Robinson has a very distinct running style gait that I think got him a lot of attention and criticism unduly when he first came to Fulham. So with Klaus, he's awkward, and strikers are hot and cold. We know that when they're don't have that confidence flowing through them, they can get in their own head. As Matt said, Klaus was in his head last year. We don't know details. We don't need to. But we've also seen in 2023 that Klaus can make some really beautiful finishes out of absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And that awkward beauty that we hope to see this year in 2025.
One stat that I want to say for Klaus, I mentioned earlier Simon Betcher was leading the team in one stat. Simon Betcher led the team in goals per 90 last year. Guess who led the team in expected goals and expected goals per 90 with greater than 0 starts?
Thorson?
Klaus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, this wasn't a trick question. This was the obvious answer. Klaus had he was second on the team in expected goals per 90, but it was second to Caden Glover, who didn't have a single start, so it was small sample size, doesn't count. Klaus's expected goals overall led the team by 4 goals. He was expected to score 9.3 goals based on the XG numbers. And I think that speaks that's data to back up the fact that he was getting in pretty good positions. He just wasn't finishing. And in the end of the day, XG doesn't win you games. XG doesn't help us feel good about the team at the end of the day. But XG helps to explain if you're a player putting yourself in good positions and getting fairly good shots off. Klaus was doing that, and if he can get outside of himself, doesn't get in his own head, like you were saying, Stu, I think he can build off of that. There was something to build off of for Klaus in 2024.
And Carnell was blamed. He was like the one where we were like, lots of XG, no goals. So Do we throw that on Carnell? That's an interesting thought now that we're in the position we are now with Olaf. Something to watch this year, perhaps. Any other questions? Surely there's more.
We do have some in the chat.
Ooh, yeah, let's roll with that.
Who is from, let's say, Eli Carlson. Who, in your opinion, is the most overlooked or underrated player? And I assume he means on City.
Stu, let's go with you first. Most overlooked.
Overlooked or underrated player?
Underappreciated.
Underrated.
I've got one.
I'm going to say Thomas Dolan. I
a good
think he
one.
gets plaudits and attention, but he's a fantastic player. I like what he brings. He's a hard worker, and I think usually the most overlooked guys are generally the more defensively focused, which not saying applies to Thomas, but I think Durkin or maybe even Leuven would be somewhat of the easy answer.
You want to go? Yeah, I would say Rasmus Alm.
Yeah.
And it's because I think Rasmus Alm is getting lost in the shuffle a little bit about the new formation and where he's going to be on the field. Under Olaf, we saw him as a center attacking mid, and we saw him as a second striker alongside Betcher, I think, at the time. But we know Rasmus Alm's speed. We know how good he is on the ball in the attacking third. And I think he's a player who is going to be a kind of a sneaky sub and push himself into the starting 11 a lot more than we're giving him credit for.
I was going to say Totland, he needs to just have a full season of what he did in the beginning. He looked incredible. So if he can put a full season of that together and then take one more step up, I think he's going to be a U.S. national team player. I think he'll be a January camper, a Gold Cup call-up.
I do think Thomas Totland might be the player who benefits the most from the shift in formation.
I agree too. That's well said. The main I'm taking two here. Kessler is going to be my answer if I'm not going to say either of the two you guys picked. I think he is sneaky, maybe our best center back, better than Nilsson even perhaps. Just the fact that he stays healthy longer and is younger, his projection in the next 2 or 3 years is like really, really good. And I think he's a potential one we could sell to Europe. I think that's something he would enjoy, and I think he would thrive at as well. So I hope for that in the future. American, right? An American on St. Louis City that we could sell off to Europe. That's something, it's a dream of mine.
Yeah, I think our replacements for Indy taking the crown of most likable are probably up there with Kessler, Celio, or maybe Watts.
Completely agree. Do we have another question?
I also want to throw my hat in the ring for Timo Baumgartel as I don't know if
too soon, Matt. Too soon.
I don't know if you can call him underrated. I just think he might be the newcomer of the year. Are we able to say that since we signed like 2 players?
Sure.
And I think it's surprised because
everybody say whatever you want.
Everybody sees Conrad Wallem and they see, okay, he came in and he's going to play that left wing back role because we don't have many other players that can. And we saw him basically score a goal in preseason. I think Timo Baumgartel is ready-made for this system. I think he's told me that he is a ball controlling center back. He is made to play the ball out of the back. He is made to be that distributor. He wants to have the ball at his feet, and I think he's going to thrive. And if we see him start on Saturday, the first starting 11 is a big deal under a brand new coach. You can look at health for certain players, like say, okay, Watts isn't going to be an everyday starter when Durkin comes back. Maybe one of Betcher or Klaus isn't going to be because Toyshirt's going to come back. But you look at the center backs, if they are all healthy, which, as we found out during the break, Joachim Nilsson may be a question mark on the health factor.
Because of the closed door friendly.
So Jonas Horn starting there may or may not explain a lot of things. But you see Timo Baumgartel start there at center back, and he succeeds, and he is the essentially captain of the back line there in the middle. That's going to tell us a lot. And then I think he's going to have a lot of things to build off of when he goes to San Diego and LA Galaxy if we continue to build the ball out from the back.
I'm only waiting on him because he was usually teamed up with like our backup center backs.
That's true.
But that might be for a reason. Maybe he's so solid that it's good to team him up and give those other guys experience. Clearly he's a veteran player. You can tell that when he's on the field. So other question? Anyone here? Yeah, Daniel.
All right. All right, Berkey. All right, gonna start there. All right. So, Taylor Twellman made a joke about it at the city event, right? And there's always a lot of rumors around Berkey. So realistically, why do you guys think Berkey's gonna stay with us? Do you think are we gonna re-sign him? Like, what's your realistic expectation with Berkey?
I like starting with Stu. Let's start with Stu.
All right. So questions being asked by Daniel, who's wearing a Berkey scarf right now. So
My daughter has a Berkey kid.
yeah, so I feel like I got to watch my words a little bit here. No, ultimately, I think it depends on what Berkey wants. Berkey will stay with St. Louis as long as Berkey wants to be with St. Louis, I would think. But if he
Is he going to scoot to Chicago for his girlfriend?
Well, Chicago, if Chris Brady leaves Chicago this summer, that could be a possibility if they offer enough money. It's potential that would give us another reason to hate Chicago if we need another reason. But we internally talked about this in the offseason. What would be the numbers that someone would have to offer? Say a Premier League squad comes and offers $2 million for Berkey. Would that be enough? $3 million. But Berkey's took a chance on St. Louis. He came here. I think he's earned every right to stay as long as he wants. And if he forces his way out, I think that's if he leaves. But I think he's here to the end of the season.
Mine's short. Yeah, till the end of the season for sure. I only think is he the only thing he complains about is how annoying the season is here in the United States. He doesn't seem to mind the
How
travel.
long it is.
Yeah, how long, and he hates some of the weather, like the hot stuff. But someone asked about the weather in the first preseason presser, and he was like, "What is?" It was basically he was like, "I'm from Switzerland. This is perfectly fine." So I don't think he minds it here at all. He might even love it here. He seems to like American sports and that kind of stuff. But is he going to get sick of the season itself is my only question. What do you think, Matt?
I think there's only two things that would prevent Roman Berkey from staying with St. Louis. One is the opportunity to start in a contending top 5 European league. So he's going into this season in his age 34 year, right? So he doesn't have a lot of years left in him, but at the same time, he does have a few years left in him as a goalkeeper. So he could be looking for that one big opportunity to get back to Champions League. That's a realistic future for Roman Berkey. But the other, and that's kind of obvious, right? If you have a top 5 successful team, Champions League, perennial Champions League team that wants you to start for them a goalkeeper, I get it. We can't fault Berkey for that. The other thing, though, which would be very much we could fault St. Louis for, is not being competitive this year for Roman Berkey. Yeah. I can't name a single player who took last year harder as far as their failures on the field than Roman Berkey. Seeing him game after game screaming at the field players, consistently frustrated, not having answers in his post-game pressers, but being the captain and having to face the media. Berkey was 33 years old. He's in MLS. He did not sign up for this. He did not sign up to have to hold the bag for a team that won the conference and then is doing so bad that you fire your coach midway through the next season. That's not what he signed up for. So if you want to keep Roman Berkey on a new contract for a year or two or whatever it looks like, first thing is you win. You have to be successful on the field. If the goals of being a playoff team are not met, Roman Berkey will not be here in 2026.
But did you realistically expect that year one?
No, not at all.
That's what I'm saying.
Agreed.
Right? So
I think he understood the project, and that's part of what Lutz is. And the question was, did he think that year one? I think he understood the project, right? He understood the opportunity to start. That was one of the big things that he said when Lutz first recruited him and he came to play for City 2 in 2022, is that he wanted a chance to start because he wasn't getting that in Europe. He was second string for Dortmund at that time. And he wanted the opportunity to start. He liked the sale that Lutz pitched him with to come to St. Louis, the project, the 5-year plan or whatever the Lutz had for Berkey to be the Kickstarter to all of that. And I think the success of year one maybe gave him some rose-colored glasses, but he didn't expect to, I think, repeat. And I don't want to put words in Berkey's mouth, obviously, but I wouldn't have expected to repeat conference winning seasons year after year after year.
I don't think Lutz would have been like, hey, you guys are going to win the conference.
But the train went so far off the tracks. And remember, we're talking about a 2024 team that didn't just fire their coach, but you had Chris Durkin address the media and saying the locker room's fractured. Things were broken in the middle of last season. And that's not something that Berkey signed up for. So he just wants to see commitment from the club, from the players, and from the players that he's been asked to lead to do their job. And if everything falls in line and the talent does what the talent should do, which is win and win consistently, because this team is talented enough to win consistently. They do what they need to do. They play as a team. Berkey has a shot at coming back.
Jerry Hayes says he stated his loyalty to St. Louis. Winner 83 says he stayed a long time at his last club. Crossed fingers emoji. Duck says keep Berkey and start building a statue for him outside the stadium. I say minority ownership on the next contract. Let's do it. Come on. I'd love to hear him for years to come. Give him the mic on some of these events. I'd love to see him around if he likes it here enough, and hopefully he does. That's my goal. That's my hope. Next question. Yes. From the bar side.
Okay. So the real hard-hitting question and news of the week. We got new food options in the stadium. So, of the new food options and things that you've seen come in, what are you most excited for? And what are some of your classic go-tos that have already been in the park? Energizer Park.
Good question. Stu, I think I know your favorite. I'm just going to guess.
Hand pies.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think
Yeah.
they'll have don't you make a curry hand pie? You gave me one randomly at a STLFC preseason game or something. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'm a sucker for a chicken faulty pie, which is a savory pie from the UK, and it has like a curry chicken on the inside.
Yes.
A lot of heat, and it'll warm you up on a day like Saturday. But hand pies are, I believe, from Damn Fine Hand Pies. Yeah, Damn Fine Hand Pies, and buffalo chicken. It'll warm you up. So I that's the one that caught my eye. There was another one, and if you guys don't mention it, I'll pop back over. But hear your thoughts.
I was going to go with the buffalo chicken from Damn Fine Hand Pies as one of the things I'm excited about. Pappy's also. You can't be Pappy's barbecue. The whole like Pappy's family. Pappy's, Bogert's, Daly's. I'm going to forget
Adams, I think it's called.
Adams Smokehouse. Yeah, I mean that quality through and through. As far as existing food, I love Olive and Oaks. What is it? The cheesesteak fries. Olive and Oaks cheesesteak fries are fantastic. There's what's the nacho stand they have?
I'm so bad with names. That's why I'm going to be
know.
embarrassed in a sec too.
Well, let's pull up the city app that has a huge list of all of the vendors around Energizer Park.
I'll just say about Pappy's while you're looking that up that it's such an iconic rib, even like countrywide, that I think having that represented at the park is like, this is probably one of the best ribs St. Louis has to offer. I think that's really awesome. It does worry me. I think, maybe Beast is gone. I don't know if that's not been announced, but I'm wondering that. And seeing a pork steak leave the menu at the same time is kind of a 1-for-1 because that's such a St. Louis staple. And I think they made the best pork steak St. Louis has ever seen. So that was cool.
I think that the app has been updated because they already list Bolliards, they already list Chicken Scratch, Chop Block, and Beast is still there.
So cool.
Nachos and more is there. Yep. Melts in the Match, Pappy's. Yeah. Oh, shout out to Balkan Treat Box.
Heck yeah.
Steve's Hot Dogs.
It's a must.
Balkan Treat and Steve's OGs. Like the two-way access to the Lou Fuse Plaza. And I mean,
if you have kids, like that's a lifesaver because you get there early and they want to kick the ball around and play the games and you get food. It's great. My favorite, I forgot what it's called, but the Filipino in the very upper far corner, Fat and Calf. Oh gosh. I mean, order anything from there. And I've really enjoyed that. So Stu, did we cover yours or you got one more?
That one's not listed on the app anymore.
Well, sorry. They're still there?
I hope so.
It was good. I mean, they deserve a shout, whether they're there this year or not. Stu, did we cover the one you were going to mention?
Damn Fine Hand Pies, but they have Pozole this year, right? Don't they?
Have what?
Pozole.
Oh, nice.
So steaming hot bowl of that, hopefully not thrown on the
Seriously. Fat and Calf is still there. Great question. Thank you.
It'll be great for when MLS switches to the European calendar and we're freezing for half the season.
Exactly. Get used to it now. Any other questions? We got stuff. Non-city questions?
Maybe.
Personal.
Oh, yeah. General MLS.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Chris Gebhardt, STL City News, Soccer News.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
One-time host, didn't you? You
and
hosted
one-time
with
host
me one time.
Flavor Footy, yes. So of the, this is a non-city question, but there's been a lot of movement. Ferreira going to Seattle, Lucho going, to Texas, and Evander obviously moving, Chicho Arango moving to San Jose. What player of note that's moved is going to have the biggest impact for their new team coming up this year? That's my question.
Let's open it up to the cash deal too, because I know you have a lot to say about that, Matt. Which you've said already, but
I would think Evander is going to have the biggest impact with FC Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati's been perennial contenders for the last few years, and it seems like they orchestrated this to an extent. They were the biggest beneficiaries, both financially and with the talent, of Lucho Acosta wanting to move out and replacing him with an equal, if not better, current form number 10 center attacking mid.
Yeah,
and I think he ensures that they retain the top end quality that they have, their ability to compete. And I think they wanted this. So it's like, you have to think about who wanted this for the longest period of time. And there was so much will they, won't they with Lucho Acosta and sending him out and trying to find a team that'll take him. At one point he was just training by himself in preseason and they hadn't moved him. But as soon as they figured that deal out, they ended up getting Evander. And it feels like that was the most important, pivotal, linchpin type move that FC Cincinnati wanted to do. And when you have a team that has begrudgingly, based on our history with FC Cincinnati, has put together such an intentionally good quality team that is good for not just the past couple of years, but years to come, when they want a guy like Evander and they get a guy like Evander, look out, because they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah. Note that Cincinnati's turnaround happened when they brought in a St. Louis and Pat Noonan.
I love it. Well said. Did you have one, Stu?
No, I'm answering that question with a question. Who's going to be the biggest bust of the newcomers in MLS this year? I was fishing for Miggy there, if anyone was going to say if
That's
Miggy's
right.
going to
Chicho
fall.
went to San Jose, huh? Yeah. Forgot about that.
Oh, sneaky. Well, we're not going to face him, so you're going to have to watch MLS to figure this one out. Watch out for Atlanta United. Miguel Almiron, Manuel Latte Lath.
Yeah.
They retooled. They've got firepower. Arthur Blank, right? That's the owner.
Yes.
Yeah, Arthur Blank he's not wanting to repeat the mistakes of the past couple of years. I'm glad we're not in Atlanta United's conference.
Oh my gosh, Mick. Who's the guy that went to Houston? The kid from Philly.
Jack McGlynn.
McGlynn. Thank you, Jack McGlynn. It's a good spot for him, and I just wish the best for him. And I guess I'm using this as an excuse to be like, this is good and bad, because McGlynn should have gone to Europe. They should have taken a hit just for his sake, and for maybe even the national team. I'm so selfish on this. I wish he had gone to Europe, because who went to Europe and they took a hit?
The DK?
Cucho Hernandez. Who's the Columbus striker?
It was Cucho, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he left and they took a hit. They didn't get as much as they could have with a cash deal, but he wanted to go to Europe. And now he's at, Real Betis? And
Yeah.
perfect spot for him as a player to grow and become something better. And, they said that's the kind of thing that, is going to make other players want to be in Columbus, because they won't hold them back. You could even say the same thing about Joe Aquini. I was very proud of St. Louis for sending him on to Como. It was a chance for him. It seemed to be what he wanted. We would have been better if he could have scored goals for St. Louis in season 2, right? Instead, they did what they thought was best for him. McGlynn didn't get that. He went to Houston. Now, this could work out really well for him. It's a great spot, good coach, good system for him, because he's teamed up with a guy who's a good 6 who can be a destroyer, and he can float free and do what he is good at. So I'm happy for it. This is good for MLS to keep talent in without having to sell them on if they're not happy to South America. We were able to keep a lot of quality players because of the cash deal. Something to watch, though, going forward.
One of the things I touched on with Ben Wright was this internal cash for trades market, because Jack McGlynn is, to me, the perfect example of why this is important for MLS. It's not just the ability to send the best of the best designated players, U22s or otherwise, keep them in MLS and move them between teams. But Jack McGlynn was himself shocked that he went to Houston. He was expecting to go to Europe. I think it was a championship or Serie A, Serie B team. Yeah. But he had offers. By all accounts, by all reports, they were legitimate offers, but Houston was willing to give Philadelphia more money, actual cash money to keep him in the league, to send him to Houston. And when you have that kind of now bidding war where MLS teams can bid against other teams in other parts of the world, that's the dream, right? That's the dream for MLS, where you're actually competitive. Teams are competitive against each other for talent. So you're not just saying you play for an MLS team or you can go to a Fulham or an Arsenal or a Man United. You're saying, we're playing for Philadelphia. You could go to Houston, you could go to Portland, you could go to St. Louis, or you could go to a Birmingham City or a Coventry or anybody like that.
And I'm a hypocrite because this also opens up the rule book into a place where I never thought MLS would go. And so this is like freedom, free trade, capitalism. It's just like most other leagues. Now there's still GAM and all that stuff, but this is a step in the right direction for that. And with the USL D1 league coming and maybe pushing them to have a more open market, less rules, I hope that's part of the equation. But either way, this is a good thing in the long run. I'm happy about it. We're starting to run out of time. Do we have one more question before we kind of hit some of our notes? Yeah. We can do one more if anyone's anxious, but.
Hey, y'all. I'm Ben. Quick follow-up to what you mentioned with Klaus having an option for next year. Would he be able to be bought down to a TAM player with that option? Because wouldn't we have already amortized the transfer fee over that time? Anyway, that was my side question. My real question.
I love it. Yeah, perfect. That's a good question.
Real MLS sicko here. No, my other question though was with Indy moving and us getting more GAM than we probably thought we would get when we initially saw the move announced. Is there a chance City is in for someone like Hassani Dotson or maybe Sean Davis, who just got cut by LA, or some other name that we don't know, that would be maybe not just a fill-in like Morales in central mid, but potentially a step up from Durkin or Gerwood Reich?
Let's start with the amortization.
I appreciate that first
Well
question,
done.
Ben. That was an awesome question. As best I know, the option year doesn't change the contract capabilities of buying him down. So the way the contract works, you would extend it for the actual salary of the player, but the contract itself is still designated player, cannot be bought down. It's just how MLS treats the options, and they're club options, and so the club has to make that decision. Now, as far as finding another player, I'm going to use this opportunity to shoehorn in what the GAM means for the Indiana Vassilev sale.
Well done, yeah.
It's been a while since we looked at how much GAM St. Louis City has, and by the time this comes out on pods, we might have the updated information, because MLS is supposed to release updated GAM amounts for each team after the roster locks. So we found out as of December, I think it was like December. I have December 19th because that was after Kojima. As of December 19th, St. Louis had $5.356 million in GAM. They were, I think, third most in all of MLS in how much GAM they had. But most of that GAM you have to use to pay for your salary. So it's not like we have $5.3 million of MLS money to just trade for a player and acquire them. The total amount of GAM that we would have to use on the roster this year is around 3.4 million. And that was based on last year's numbers. So like you're estimating the hit for Wallem, you're estimating the hit for Baumgartel, you're subtracting the hit for Indy, those guys like Johnny Klein, who we declined options for, Jake Nerwinski, you're adding and subtracting a few, but basically 3.4 million. So of that 5.3, we have to spend 3.4 of it on the roster for this year. That gives us around $1.9-2 million of GAM on top of that we just have that we can use. And this is an extra $1 million. So that's huge. The biggest thing with GAM is that you have to make sure that you stockpile enough to continue being able to buy down your roster the next seasons. That's why MLS gives each team a bucket of GAM at the beginning of each season. Next year, it's going to be $3.2 million. 2026, every single team is going to get $3.2 million of GAM to start the season. And so with St. Louis's need right now of 3.4, we're in pretty good shape to be able to spend some of this GAM that we have on top of that. I think we are one of, if not the best situations to be able to trade other teams using GAM, and especially because we don't need to acquire international roster slots. So we're building our roster intelligently, but the question ultimately comes back to the depth that we need. I'll go back to a point I made earlier of, yeah, there are quality free agents. There are quality players on the waiver wire right now, but whether you look at it as we've pigeonholed ourselves in certain spots or we've locked in long-term contracts with guys we expect to perform that haven't yet, there's only so many spots that I would say you would want to target without saying, okay, yeah, but now you're intentionally blocking this guy who hasn't even got a chance, namely Jake Girdwood-Reich. He is, by all accounts, flexible to play center, defensive mid, or center back, but we're pretty deep in both positions. He's a U22. He's only 20 years old. He's under contract till 2028, so he's got a long future ahead of him. We need to see something from him at some point, and not unlike a homegrown, you don't want to block them. So that's my biggest thing is you have to see what you have from these players before you just bring in proven, established players when you don't necessarily need them right now. You might have Chris Durkin injured for right. That goes back to Durkin's recovery. Players like Chris Durkin, players like Cedric Toyshirt, they're coming back, and you don't want to bring on new players like a new striker or new defensive midfielder who would basically cause you to have a decision. It's like fantasy football, where you get two players of the same caliber and you're trying to figure out which one to slot in your lineup any given week. And you're always going to make the wrong decision in 1 week. You don't want to put yourself in that spot where you're saying, I have two Chris Durkins, essentially, or I have two Cedric Toyshirts and I have one spot. You always have to make a decision. One's not going to play, but you're paying money for a player that needs to be starting.
I've actually figured it out while you were talking. I was thinking, well, sign Morales to City 2 and just loan him up twice. That's one option. I don't know if they've considered it, but no. I'm just reeling from all the numbers that you were listing there, but it sounds like we're in a good place. And I tend to agree with you. Like, don't sign anyone too soon because we got to get these kids some minutes. Even though that's enticing. Sean Davis, Sonny Dotson, great players. Morales has looked great.
Objectively, I would love a Sonny Dotson on our team. I am a big fan. But
he can play left back too, right?
But neither of them played for the 2 Bundesliga.
Deadpan. Well done, man. I enjoyed that. Stuart, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is, to be blunt, a heartless sport sometimes. So I think once the summer comes around, we'll have a better idea of what our positions of need will be. And I don't doubt that Lutz will have the killer instinct to cut a player loose if he has to. But we'll see. I mean, this gives us the flexibility that we're not bound to a roster as it stands. But I think the roster that we have on Saturday will obviously be given a chance to perform.
Do we have any one last question? Are you guys good? We have one topic that Matt mentioned bringing up. So Matt, take it away. It looks like.
One of the things I want to end on is reminding everybody how the rest of the country sees St. Louis going into this season. Specifically from MLSsoccer.com, from Backheeled, and from Give Me Sport. This is the time of year where predictions and rankings come out, and you get to see how is our team viewed by the national pundits? How are we seen from those who aren't biased, but also aren't in the specific knows of certain things? And I think I'll start with Tom Bogert, because Tom Bogert's a fairly, I think his prediction was objective. Greatest mustache in all of sports. That's why I had to shave mine. Who's the first? Oh, well, I couldn't hold a candle to him. Anyway, Tom Bogert picks us to finish 8th, behind Seattle, LAFC, Minnesota United, LA Galaxy, Colorado, Portland, Dallas, and then us. 8th is respectable because it's 4 up from last season. And you're starting to get into the conversation as we look at these of we improved a lot last season. And this is the prevailing narrative from everybody that I've read. We improved a lot last season. We had a good finish to the year, but we didn't do a whole lot this winter transfer window. Other teams did a significant amount in the winter transfer window. Colorado did a lot. Portland made some moves. Dallas did a ton. Austin did a ton. San Jose did a massive amount. So what we're seeing, what I see in some of these that I'm going to mention, and Tom laid it out pretty well, Seattle, LAFC, LA Galaxy, and maybe Minnesota, pretty much consensus top 4. Minnesota is up and down, but people love Seattle, love LAFC as the top 2. And then the Galaxy are finding themselves at the top a lot, as is Minnesota and Austin from some that I've seen. St. Louis is 8th for Tom Bogert. For our friends at Backheeled, which includes Ben Wright, St. Louis is going to finish anywhere from 5th, according to Ben Wright, 7th, according to John Arnold, who's also an ESPN contributor. And then there's 3 other contributors who pick St. Louis 11th, 10th, and 11th. That's fairly standard. So you've got 7, 10, 7, 11, 10, 11. You know, we're talking fringe playoff team here. Ben Wright is optimistic, which if you listen to his discussion with me, you know why he's optimistic. He believes in the retooling and that team that was constructed last season can compete with all the changes that occurred. But the fun thing is when you get into the MLSsoccer.com predictions. And this is where I want to really reinforce, like, people have no idea what to expect from St. Louis in 2025. Not just the experts, but there's no way, and I told Phil this before we started, there's no way that you can objectively say this makes sense that 2 different people would look at St. Louis City's roster now, their finish last season, what everybody else in the league did, and say, one of them says, I think St. Louis is going to finish 4th, which is a home playoff berth. And another says, I think St. Louis is finishing dead last in the Western Conference. Because that's what happened here. We have 13th, 5th, 4th, 7th, 15th, 7th, 9th, 8th, and 13th. All over the board. I mean, you've got two fringe home playoff berths, and then you have 3 people that say, we're not just missing the playoffs, we're missing the playoffs worse than we did last year. I can see the argument that St. Louis improved, but they didn't improve in context to other teams and what they did in the winter transfer window. But I will never be able to understand somebody saying St. Louis will finish worse this year than they did last based on who we've added, not just in this winter transfer window, but at the end of last season.
Stu, can you make sense of these rankings?
My guess is whoever guessed that we would finish last just pulled that out of somewhere and threw it out there because he didn't know what he was talking about exactly. But MLS, you got to stay healthy. And I think you talk about your floor and your ceiling in MLS, and we're in the kind of that squishy middle bit. So if we stay healthy, yeah, I could see us finishing, 4th, 5th. And if we don't, I think 11th could happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And there is a big squishy middle bit. Like I mentioned, the top few teams of LAFC and Seattle. A lot of people have Austin. A lot of people have LA Galaxy, Minnesota. The squishy middle are teams like St. Louis, Houston, Dallas, Salt Lake, San Jose, Vancouver, the Rapids. I mean, there's a few teams that a lot of pundits pick to finish bottom of the barrel. We're looking at San Diego, Kansas City. Thankfully, I mean, it's the right call. Like, let's be honest, objectively. A lot of people have Portland finishing low. San Jose are not a lot of believers. But then you have this huge squishy middle that is going to encompass the story of the season. And the reason I wanted to try and finish on this note is the overarching story of this season is going to be that squishy middle. It's going to be, you have Seattle and LAFC, maybe the Galaxy in Minnesota that you expect to win more games than not, but it's going to be a dogfight in the West. A lot of the retooling that occurred is taking talent from the East and moving it to the West. The cash for trades deal did that in spades. And so you have all these teams that are now just marginally better compared to each other, and you don't know where anybody's going to shake out. Injuries are obviously going to play a factor, and you're going to have that as a storyline too. But it's going to be who beats up on who week in and week out, because no team in the West, minus those top, maybe Seattle and LAFC are the elite, but no other team is really better than any other. And so home field advantage is going to be the thing that I think makes or breaks what St. Louis does this season. We need to win on the road, but last year, City Park wasn't a fortress. We need to make Energizer Park a fortress, and that's the beginning to making any kind of run.
I just want to defend these guys a little bit in that, obviously MLS has a salary cap. So from the top to the bottom, as much as we're very clear about the top few people on all of these rankings are pretty much standard, like Matt said. It's not like it's Ligue 1, right, in France. It's not like PSV is here and the rest of France is down here. It's not like Netherlands where it's like PSV, Ajax, maybe Feyenoord, and then everybody else, right? the difference between those clubs in their respective countries and MLS, the top few and the rest, is those top few were so much closer, so much closer. And this little mushy middle is still very close to some of those bottom dwellers who every year there's a bottom dweller that surprises the hell out of everybody. So, MLS is such a crazy one to predict. But on top of that, St. Louis is one of those rosters. I was listening to David Goss talk to Scuffed the other day, and he was talking about old MLS versus new MLS. And now there's like, the roster rules are the roster rules, but like everyone has to find an advantage somehow. And they have different kinds of roster builds. They do it all differently. Even the top few, so many different models between Miami, LAFC, Seattle, Minnesota, totally different build than all of those. So that's so much fun. It's really cool. MLS has become a very cool league. And St. Louis is one of those that doesn't have like 2 or 3 superstars. One gets hurt and we're done. We got a mushy middle of ourselves. We got a lot of quality players right in the middle of our roster. And then we probably got guys like Hartle, Teuscher, and Becher are the guys that Ben Wright listed, and I agree with him. Those are guys that most people in MLS, even pundits, have no clue how good these guys actually are, in my opinion. Obviously, we're very biased. So it's tough. It's tough to guess. And I like that we're underestimated. It's also tough because we've had an amazing season, a really crap season, and a new coach, right? So who knows if you're not watching? But hopefully, if you're listening to Matt, if you're listening to the other podcasts in St. Louis, I think we have a good idea that based on what happened last year, what's happening in the preseason, I think we have a good season ahead of us, guys. I'm really, really excited for what we can see with these guys, what Olaf has cooking in the kitchen. I think it's going to be a really good season. I'm really excited about it. And I thought I'd end on a positive note in that way. And you guys want to say anything before we go?
Oh, I think you have to end on a positive note. There's no other way to look at this season. The news today, as we record this, and we're live at Blue Jay about Indiana Vassilev, has everybody kind of feeling a certain way. But you take a step back, and we're going to go into Saturday with the best starting 11, I feel objectively, that we've had in 3 years to start a game. We're dealing with a couple injuries, but we have the depth now to withstand those. The top-end talent from Marcel Hartle to Cedric Teuscher, who I do expect to play at some point on Saturday, Klaus Becher. You have wingbacks that have had success in the preseason. And the best thing for me, while there's so much unknown about the formation, there's so much unknown about how it and the tactics are going to apply to an actual regular season match or season, is that we're taking momentum into the regular season. It was a successful preseason to me. I enjoyed watching the team in Coachella, and I think that they got better game over game. And that's what you want, and that's what you need to do when you're going to take a new coach who's unproven in MLS. You're taking a new formation. You're taking players who the formation is new to them as well, because they're used to one style of play. Now you're giving them something different. Nothing but positivity going into this season. The way we finished against, what was it, NYCFC? I think that's exactly what you want to see going into the regular season. There's opportunity at home. The beginning of the season is, I think, ready-made for us to take advantage of. There's a home game, which we've talked about. Home field advantage is so important in MLS, and it's so key. We know the noise. We know the pressure that Colorado is going to be under. That's a win for us. We need to win Saturday. San Diego is the expansion team. That's a gift that we get to play them so early in the season. That needs to be our first away win. That can be a statement win, and that's how you build momentum, is taking advantage of an expansion team early in the season. And then LA Galaxy, they are depleted. They have injuries. Another good opportunity to steal 3 on the road. The beginning to this season has so much potential that I think we can't help but get excited for.
And I think our style lends well to performing well in the first part of the season has been. I love that from Ben Wright. Stu, last thoughts from you?
I'll keep it quick and simple. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at a City win on Saturday at Energizer Park. So let's go City.
All right, I'm going to do this. I've been thinking about it and planning it. I'm not going to lie. So I'm going to end the night on a toast. I want to say thank you to Blue Jay Brewing. Thank you for having us tonight. A dream of a place. Thank you for having us. To the nerdiest listeners any podcast has ever had. Thank God you're here. There's no way you'd be here if you weren't. So we all got to admit the geekiness that we are. And lastly, Let's go, City! Woo! Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Seriously, thank you